In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the IndexMatch function, which is a way that we can return values in a one-way and a two-way lookup. So very similar to VLOOKUP, where we want to return some information based on a value that we're looking up, but VLOOKUP can fail in a couple situations. Here's one of them. I want the user to type in a locker number, and we're then going to return the last name of the person who owns that locker. Or another example, I'm going to have the user enter a last name, and then they're going to put in which column of information would they like about that last name. So for instance, they'll put in Hovey and then the birth date, and then we would return that information. So let's see what VLOOKUP would do. Before we do that, let's do a little data validation to make life easier for our users. We want them to enter a locker number. I'm not going to trust them to type the right thing, so I'm just going to create a list. And the same thing with the last name. I want them to type the name correctly so my functions will work properly. So I will just do a list and grab a source of the last name. So running up here, the user grabs locker 45. And if I were to do VLOOKUP, let's zoom in a little bit here. So I'm going to do a VLOOKUP, and the lookup value is the locker number. No problem. I am going to grab this information like we do with the VLOOKUP. Well, here's a problem. I want to return which column number. VLOOKUP can't have a negative column number, right? So if I'm trying to return last name, I can't put in negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can't use a VLOOKUP when the value you want to return is to the left of your lookup value. So that's failure number one. The second failure is your user says, hey, I want to grab this guy's name, and oops, I forgot to do my data validation here. We are going to create a list, and the source of this list are our column headings. So I'm going to hit OK. And I want the guy's last name and then his location at this point, okay? So if I were to do a VLOOKUP, I'm to return that information. I will go ahead and put equal VLOOKUP. I'm going to look up this guy's last name. Cool. Where's my table array? It's right here. Great. Well, which column am I going to return? Well, right now it's column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could put in a 5 and that would return his location. But wait a minute. Let's make sure we get an exact match here. The problem becomes, what if your user all of a sudden switches this out to their hire date? Well, now that's column 2. What if he then switches it out to the birth date or the sex? Well, then that's column 3 or 4. So the point is, VLOOKUP, it's hard to make this column index number flexible based on something that the users have typed. So that's why we're going to introduce IndexMatch because of these VLOOKUP failures. So first, let's talk about the index function. It's very easy to use. It has 3 pieces is all it needs. So let's zoom in just a little bit again. If I type equal index and parentheses, it's what we call an overloaded function. There's a couple versions. We're just using the top one. And what it asks for is an array. And then it wants a row number and a column number, and it returns the intersection of those 3 things. So in other words, if this red box is my array, and then I have this row and this column, it would return that value. That would be the intersection of that array, this row, that column. So taking a look at this, here is the red box, A11 to G23. I want row 1, column 2. It would return the name Hovey right there. If I have that same array and I want row 1, 2, 3, 4, column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it would return the name Austin. So just to demonstrate that, equal index. The array is this area right here, comma, what row did we want? 4, what column? 6, parentheses, and you hit enter, and we return that value Austin. So indexes are fairly handy. As you can imagine, we're hard coding this row and column. Now, how can I make that more flexible? So let's go talk to them about the match or the XMatch function. So here is the idea of match or X match. They return the relative position of a value in an array. Okay, so what does that mean? We're going to enter a last name. So we'll enter Featherston. I want to know in this array, what row is that in? Well, right now we can count it. 1, 2, 3. This is what the match function does. And let's explain the difference between match or X match. So if I type equal match, and what's the lookup value? I want to look up this guy's name. So this is very similar to VLOOKUP, comma. What's the lookup array? It's in all of these names. Perfect. Comma. Here's what match does. If you want an exact match, which in this class, for the most part, we want an exact match, you have to type 0 for an exact match. You can see it right there. So that's going to say I have to find that name exactly. So you hit enter, and it's returning a number 3, which is the row number of that guy's name. Pretty darn handy. Now, X match. The only difference between match and X match is you put an X in front of it, of course, and this match mode defaults to an exact match. You don't have to put a 0 to get an exact match. So it just saves you the step of typing a 0 if you use X match versus match. That's the only difference for our intents. For all intents and purposes, that's the only difference. There are a couple others, but for this class, they're not really relevant. So you hit X match, and it's again going to return the 3. Now, we can also use it. Let's say the user wants to return the location. Well, I need to know what column number is that. So I can use the same X match. I'm going to look up the location, except instead of a group of rows, I'm going to search across a set of columns. Same idea. That's my lookup array. And what is my match mode? 0 is the exact match. It defaults to an exact match. I'm good with that, so I can hit enter. Column 6. So now if the user says, hey, I want to return this guy's locker number, that's column 7. If I change the guy's name to Hovey, that's row 1. So you can see I can get the row number and the column number. And don't forget, on the index, I need a row number and a column number. So that's why these functions tend to be called index matches, because we're about to use them together. So let's go try this. Let's run to the next sheet. And here's what we want to do. This is going to be called a one-way lookup. Your user is going to enter a locker number, and we want a function that will return who is the owner of this locker. So LeBrun is the name that we want to return, okay? Remember my match function, or X match. I'm going to look up this number, comma, right, where are the locker numbers? They're right here, okay? And what's my match mode? It's 0, but it defaults to 0, so I'm good with this. That locker is in row 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. Well, I want to return the last name. So we are going to go index. What is the array? In this case, I want just the single column. I want to return the last name. And that's what this array is. I'll hit OK on that. The array is the values that I'm trying to return. In this case, it's the last name. So I'm just going to grab this column, comma. What row number do I want? Oh, well, it depends on what locker number they selected. And I have this match function right here that's returning the row number based on the locker number. And then what column number do we want? Well, in this case, we only have 1. That's why column number is optional. If you don't put it in, it assumes the first one. We can also put it in. So now we end up with LeBrun. If I switch this out to locker 23, scroll up, the row number is 1. Well, what name is returned at row 1 out of this array? The Hovey name, right? So now, the deal is rather than using 2 cells, I can just replace this reference right here with an XMatch function inside of the index, in which case I'm going to look up the locker number. I'm going to look it up through these values, and I close that up, and we're done. And so now I can sit there and change this locker number to whatever I want, and I'm going to retrieve the name with that. So this is what that function looks like. Let's double click. It's the array of things I want to return, last name. It's the row number right here, which is the XMatch. It says, what row do I want to return? Cool. So now let's do a two-way lookup. In this situation, you're saying, hey, user, enter the last name. Enter what information do you want to return about this person? I'm giving you the flexibility. So not only do they choose the last name, but then they can say, I want to return a hire date or a birth date or sex or location or locker number. So right here, we will enter, let's do location again. So let's do our XMatch, equal XMatch. I want to look up the last name. Well, where am I going to look that up? Right here. Whoop, with all the last names. Exact match. We'll hit enter. That is in row 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. The user says, yeah, I want to find this guy's location. Well, what column number is that? Equal XMatch. What am I looking up? This word. And where am I looking for that? Across all of these columns, right? Because I'm trying to figure out, is it column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, or 7 if they choose locker number, of course. And in this case, it's going to return 6. Yeah, location is column 6. Now, I want to return LeBron's location. So this is where we use the index. So equal index. The array this time is any of the values that we might want to return. So I am grabbing all of these values, not the column headings, just the values that you might want to return. And in this case, we might want to return the location or the sex, birth date, hire date, the ID. It doesn't matter because the user can choose what we're going to return. What row number am I looking for the intersection? Well, we figured it out right here, comma. And what column number? Well, we know that is right here. So what's the intersection of row 4 and 6 of that array? Austin. So this guy is in Austin. Of course, if I switch this up and choose Hovey in this case, his location, is also Austin, but let's say I want to get his ID. I need Hovey's ID. Column number 1, and his return value is 1024. So this is a two-way lookup. Let's do locker number. Hovey's locker number is 23. We can run down here and go Lambrick's locker number is 37. So you can make a nice interactive table for your user that gives them the flexibility of choosing a name and which column of information they want to return. Now, one more point. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Rather than using up all of these other cells to figure this out, I can, well, let's do it this way. I can take this XMatch, which is returning the row, and I'm not going to grab the equal sign. I'm going to go Control Copy, hit the Escape key, and then right here I can replace N4 Control Paste with that XMatch. Perfect. For the N6, just to demonstrate, I'll type it again. XMatch. It's not hard. I'm on the column number, right, of my index. So it's like, well, what's the column number? The column number depends on what the user chose. So I'm going to look at what they chose, comma, and I'm going to run through, I have to scoot over here, all of these column headings, and then close this up because it's already defaults to an exact match. And now I get for Lambrick's locker number 37, and that's working, and that's what an index match formula looks like. One more example, and then we're done with this. Let's say we have a situation where we have people's names, regions in which we sell products, and this is the sales quantity for this person in each of those regions. We're making a two-way lookup table, so your boss can enter a name, and they can enter a region, and we're going to return the sales amount for this person in that region. This is a two-way lookup. Has to be done with an X index match, or there is another way we'll do in another video. But for now, we're learning index match. So zoom in. Let's talk about equal index. First parameter. What's the array? The array are the values that we're trying to return. I'm trying to return the sales amount. So you select all of the sales amounts. There you go. That's my array. So now we need a row column intersection to get a single value. Well, what row number? Well, the name is Overton, so that's row 2. So I'm going to do my X match. The lookup value is the name the user selected, comma, where am I looking for that name? Right here. And notice the size of this array has the same number of rows as our index array. Once in a while, I'll get a student that will grab the column headings. And so now you have one more row, and then we end up with a problem because X match Overton would be 1, 2, 3, and yet over here, 3 is Featherton's, 5906, 1, 2, 3. These two areas need to be exactly the same. So don't grab the column headings, just grab the names. So now Overton is 1, 2, and we'll get the 3, 4, 2, 1. Close up this X match because it's an exact match. We don't need to put the 0, comma, what column? Well, what does the column depend on? Well, did they choose east, west, south, or central? So we will do X match. The lookup value is the region that our user selected. Where am I looking for that? Right across my column headings, and match mode is 0, so we don't have to type it. We put in the parentheses and we hit enter. So Overton South 3120. It's working. Let's go with our Hovey guy, and we'll go with the east region, and that's 3210 right there. What if we were to do Lambert's and the central region? 5492. So we've created a two-way lookup with a single formula, index match. So just pay attention when you want the row number, you've got to be looking for something in the rows. When you want the column number, you're looking for something across the columns. I hit escape because I didn't mean to edit that formula. So that's what it looks like, and that is it for index match.